Welcome to Plant Prescription, the one and only houseplant podcast from Costa Farms. We are so glad you're joining us today. I'm Justin, a horticulturist here, and I'm joined by the lovely
Michelle Opala, IPM at Costa Farms.
IPM, for those of you who don't know, is Integrated Pest Management, and Michelle makes sure that our plants are healthy and beautiful and pest-free.
Yes.
Like every episode, we jump into some Q&A, so thank you to everybody who submitted a question, and if you have burning houseplant questions, let us know. Our very first one today comes from Chris in Grantsville, West Virginia. Chris says, I noticed my golden pothos has started dripping water from the tips of the leaves. What's going on and how do I stop it?
So what you're seeing or what you're experiencing, Chris, is a little fun thing that we call guttation, which is a fun word to say.
I know, it's one of the best words in our horticultural dictionary, isn't it?
Thank you. I'm so glad you jumped in and agreed with that because I just like guttation just feels so good to say. I guess that you could also call it exudation, but that's not nearly as fun.
It's not.
So Justin, do you want to talk about what that is?
So guttation is when, and I may not explain this as well as Michelle because it's been a lot of years since I was in horticulture school.
Okay.
But it's when the plant basically excretes extra moisture through its leaf pores. And one of the common misperceptions with folks about guttation is that it doesn't necessarily mean your plant is being overwatered. There are a number of different situations where it could be just fine from a hydration standpoint, but it still needs to shed some excess water, like temperature changes, for example.
Yep. So fun fact about guttation, I have experienced, everybody's experienced this, but I have experienced it in a horrific way firsthand. I thought it would be a great idea to put a shelf over my bed and then put some plants on the shelf because I've seen it on Instagram. You know where this is going. I saw it on Instagram. Everybody did. It was gorgeous. And I wanted that look. And so I did this. And for almost a year, my plants essentially waterboarded me while I was sleeping. Because this lovely thing called guttation is basically when little water droplets will form. It can form anywhere. Most commonly, I've seen it form on the tips of the leaves, like where that point is. And it would form at night. It normally happens at night, which I can go into in a second, but it forms at night. And then obviously the thing just drops like directly onto my forehead while I'm sleeping. And, I knew it was happening and I knew why it was happening. And it's funny because I've noticed certain plants will do it, certain plants won't. And I very unfortunately put the wrong plants up there. And I just refused to move my plants. So for a year, I was waterboarded by my plants. But this is totally normal. Probably not the best situation to have it above your head. But totally normal thing to do. And guttation, yeah, like Justin said, it's basically the plant excreting excess water through its pores. It's these things called like hydatodes, I think is what they're called. So you have like your leaf veins and they end at pores called hydatodes. And these are like leaf veins are like pathways for a lot of things, keep in mind. And at night, the stomata close. So during the day, the plant is releasing excess moisture through its stomata, which is transpiration. It's doing this during the day. But at night, when those stomata close, water all of a sudden doesn't have a means to escape. And if your soil is wet, your plant is still taking up water, which results in excess pressure in your plant. And it has to go somewhere. So it goes out those leaf veins, out those hydatodes, and it goes there. So that's kind of why it happens. It's mostly because of a pressure issue. Not issue. The plant is very good at regulating this, but it takes a couple of salts, things like that. But it's basically just excess pressure of water.
And it can happen in a lot of plants. Aroids, plants in the aroid family, so philodendron, pothos, alocasia, tend to do it a little more than other plant families.
Certainly do. That is what I had above my bed. Yep.
But yeah, the good news, Chris, is it's nothing to worry about. You don't have to worry about stopping it. It's just a natural process.
I will say something though. Be careful because this has happened to me in the past. If your leaf is touching your wall in your drywall and this is consistently happening, it could end up leaving like a little stain on your drywall. So that is one thing I would caution against. If that's happening over time, it will kind of leave a stain, like a little water stain.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Learned that one the hard way too.
The best lessons are by experience.
Oh yeah.
All right, question number 2. What is your recommendation for stopping aphids on houseplants? This comes from Cass in Beaumont, Kansas. Now, any of you regular listeners know that Michelle is probably going to be very excited about this one.
I'm like bursting at the seams here. Do you want to go first? Because once I start, I don't know if I can stop on this.
Oh, no, this is all you, Michelle.
You sure you don't have like just if you need me to stop, just wave your arms and I will stop. Okay.
Will do.
Okay. So aphids on houseplants. Well, aphids are probably my nightmare. The aphids hits hard home because it's one of the biggest pests that we deal with in Asheville on our crops. And currently, this really strikes a chord because currently I have aphids for the first time ever on my houseplants. I made a rookie mistake and I put a philodendron outside during the summer and I brought it in and put it right with all my other plants. Justin's nodding. It's a rookie mistake. It's such a rookie mistake because every time you bring plants in over the summer, they always have something on them. So anyway, I'm currently dealing with it right now. What I'm doing, and it's going to sound really gross, but I'm just smushing them, which definitely takes somebody with a harder stomach because they're like little water bombs. And when you smush them, it's very messy. So I'm just doing that right now because I don't have a whole heck of a lot of them. It does require thorough scouting, like thoroughly looking at all of your leaves. Again, like spider mites, most of these guys tend to hang out on the undersides of the leaves. So if you're going to look for them, look for them on the undersides of the leaves. So
And
that's what I'm
growth.
doing. Yes, and the new growth for sure, especially on a thing like philodendron. My theory is I don't know if it's right, and just this is Michelle opinion theory time. I think that they're going after this new tender growth on my philodendrons because they simply can't get their little I should know the word for this. Yeah, thank you. They simply can't penetrate the older leaf tissue. So the new leaf tissue is nice and supple. It's easy to get to, easy to stab. So I always, if I see them, it's on the new growth. Good point, Justin. Yeah, undersides of the leaves and new growth. But that's what I'm doing. A lot of people probably wouldn't want to do that because it's gross. So first, bios. And then chemicals. We'll go over bios first because
actually, let's go into another way of hand control that's not as gross. Okay. So what I do, or what I have done in the past, I'm lucky enough not to have aphids right now, is I do the sink or bathroom, and I manually wash them off with a strong stream of water from the little sprayer in the kitchen sink or the shower.
Yep.
One of the nice things about aphids is that once you knock them off, they're done. It's not like a white fly or something else that's going to come back. Uh-oh, Michelle's looking dubious at that.
I think it just depends on the tenacity of the aphid. I've seen them. Some of them are surprisingly fast for being small aphids. Some of them
right, but when you wash them off in the sink or the bathtub, once they get in that water, they're just done for. Right.
If they get in the water, right. Yeah. But if you're washing them off and they land, let's say, perfectly on the soil surface and they don't get drowned in the soil, well, then, they'll probably wander right back up. But if they go in the water, they're not going to, they're done. They're done. They are speedy little things, though, every now and then. Yeah. It depends on the species. Some species of aphids, if you just tap the plant, they'll fall right off. They're like little kamikazes. They just can't handle any movement. They're just so stressed out all the time. And so any little movement, breeze, you knock a plant, anything, and they'll just rain off of the plant, which would be ideal if that was all the aphids we ever dealt with, because then you just get it like a mega fan and they'll never stay on the plant, but probably not the case here. So water works. If you want to try bios, I always recommend trying them. It can be difficult to use bios in a house because it's not their natural environment. That's not like they don't know where they are. They may not work as effectively. But a really classic example for aphid control for bios would be lacewing. Again, if you get lacewing, don't get the adults because the adults are not carnivores. They're not going to do a whole lot. They're beautiful and they're going to look so pretty, but they're not going to do a whole heck of a lot. A whole heck of a lot. Wow. The eggs and the larva is what you probably would be better off getting for lacewing. A little PSA announcement, please don't try to use ladybugs inside. I have seen a lot of people get ladybugs and just release them inside their house, and they don't really like that. They don't do too well. So please don't use ladybugs. They're just not going to perform for you. You could try parasitoids. I think it would be a little expensive for a homeowner. But I have seen parasitized aphids in my house, so they do work. I don't know where they come from, but they fly in and they get the aphids inside of the house. So parasitoids, if you're curious, are little tiny wasps. They look like fungus gnats, and don't let this scare you. They're not fungus gnats.
I know, Michelle. You've said they're wasps, and they look like fungus gnats, which are two like red flags to a lot of plant parents.
I didn't, honestly, you're right. Like wasps would probably scare more people than fungus gnats would. Depending, if you're a plant person, fungus gnats are way scarier than wasps are. But okay, so neither of those should scare you because they can't hurt you. They're super tiny and they've got really skinny waist, long antenna, and these pointy butts, which are basically their ovipositors. And that's what they use to stab the aphid. And then they insert an egg inside of the aphid. The egg hatches, it eats it from the inside out. And then when it's all done, this aphid turns this brown, bloated color. It's like a bloated brown balloon, which we call an aphid mummy because on the inside, it's a parasitoid. And when it's all done, it's grown up inside of its dead aphid host. It'll chew a hole and just emerge out of that aphid ready to go either mate or eat or, lay an egg in someone else after it mates. So they emerge all happy. But aphid mummies, those like big bloated brown things. If you see a round circle, if you're really good eyesight and you see a round circle, a good bug hatched out of that. So that's good. They are expensive, so probably not your first option, but it would be fun to try if you ever have them in your house, in your garden, wherever. I know we're talking about houseplants, but they are fun to try. And if you see them out in nature, it's fun to see them. There's a lot of different species. Get a mix because you probably don't know what aphids you have, and parasitoids can be pretty specific. Some of them will go after the small aphids, some will go after the big aphids. So instead of just trying to ID it, just get a mix and just hedge your bets. Do you have anything to add about that? Because I'm about to go on a chemical tangent now.
Nope, jump into chemicals.
Okay. All right. I just want to give you an opportunity because when you said aphids, I was like, oh, my. Okay. So chemical tangent side. You could do the physical, you could do bios, you could do chemicals. And by chemicals, I'm including neem oil. And I'm also including insecticidal soap into that category. We kind of talked about neem oil in a previous episode. It does okay. It's a suffocant. It does okay, but in this scenario, maybe you may be better off with an insecticidal soap. I'm not talking Dawn, I'm not talking Bronner's, I'm talking something that is labeled insecticidal soap. Because if you use something that's not labeled for plants, well, you could end up really hurting your plants. So make sure it is labeled insecticidal soap. And when you're using that, always with anything, follow the label instructions and be extra careful when using that kind of stuff on fuzzy plants and or ferns. Because those can be really sensitive to oils and soaps.
Yeah, and you may see on the instructions it also says do not use on other certain types of plants too, where the insecticidal soap manufacturer in their testing process has found that plants X, Y, and Z have a bad reaction to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So always read the label.
Yep. And if they found that, often they should put that on the label. And just be really thorough in reading that label, whatever you get. Because those are generally, they're safe to us, humans. But if you go the other route and like do the synthetic chemical route, which I have nothing against it, just be very careful and read that label because a lot of times those can be a little dangerous to apply as a spray inside. Things like pyrethrins. Oh, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying like naming a specific chemical, but those are great and they work phenomenally. But you really don't want to use those inside. So be very, very, very careful and read that label. As a rule of thumb, I would never do any dust because I know there's dust available, things like that. I would never do that indoors. And then another option for the chemicals is the systemic drench, which systemic means
it is absorbed within the system of the plant, making the plant poisonous to the insects that feed from it.
Yes, very exactly correct. So systemics are great because you're not like spraying them in the air. You're not like atomizing this chemical in the air. And that's why systemics indoors would be okay. The only thing, there's a couple of things. There's not just one. There's always more than one. So a lot of times they're absorbed through the roots, and systemic chemicals tend to have a higher water solubility, not always, but they tend to, which means they dissolve in water easier so that the roots can take them up. But that being said, if you drench this chemical and then you water your plant and all of that stuff comes out the bottom, well, guess what? You didn't give your plant enough time to suck that chemical up, and you're not going to get any control. And the control for systemics will likely take a little bit longer than a spray would because you've got to imagine it's got to go into the plant. The plant has to take it up, which takes a while, and it has to get all the way up to the areas where the aphids are. Then the aphids have to eat it, and then they die. So the systemic is going to take a little bit longer. And one last word of caution. Systemics generally are safe-ish indoors compared to other sprays and things like that. However, if your pets are like mine and your cat loves to drink the water that comes out of the bottom of the pot, well, you've got to be very, 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 very careful if you're using systemics because you do not want your pets to drink that. So what I do is fortunately I have my plants in a room, and so I can just lock the room. But you could also just apply the chemical in your tub or your sink or wherever so that the leachate doesn't get caught in that saucer. Or if you get it caught in that saucer, figure out how to dump it from the saucer. Because that's just one thing. When I did it, I was like, oh God, my cat, she always drinks the plant water. It's so frustrating. And I just can see her drinking that. So and last thing, just be careful of that. Oh, one last thing. I'm sorry, not done, per usual. So when you do whatever treatment you decide to do, if you squish them, if you wash them, if you nuke them, if you put bugs out, whatever you decide to do, make sure you check the surrounding plants that you think, oh, this is far enough away, there can't be an aphid on this. Wrong. Because aphids can form alates, which is like the winged form of the aphid, and they can fly. And they're not strong flyers, but they can go farther than you think. So when you're doing this treatment, before you do this treatment, try to look on the undersides of the leaves and try to look and see if you see anything that is just like a bug on there and it has two wings on either side of its body. I wish we could magically make photos appear in people's minds because it's difficult to describe this. But it's an aphid with wings. And it doesn't look like a normal aphid, but just look around the other plants and see if you see anything suspicious. And
happily, if you are having trouble envisioning what Michelle is talking about, also easy enough to go to Google and do an image search for aphid with wings.
Yes.
All right.
We do have modern technology.
My one tip for aphids, and I know this is bad news for people who like the easy way out. No treatment is going to be a one and done. Aphids reproduce quickly enough that if you use insecticidal soap, or even even the hand squishing or the washing off, you're going to need to do it multiple times. Because you'll get the adults, you'll get some of the young ones, but there's always going to be some that slip through. You may not get the eggs, so the eggs will hatch, become a whole new generation. And was that?
Will somebody please ask the question about aphid reproduction so I could just, because I can't right now, but will somebody please, anybody listening, anybody out there, will somebody please just ask about aphid reproduction, please? Because although eggs do exist, they probably don't exist inside on your houseplants. I'm just gonna
Really?
I can't even start it though, Justin, because it's a big hole. So please, somebody out there, if you want to know why, please ask.
All right. Anything else other than aphid reproduction that you're wanting to cover, Michelle?
No, no, no. I know. All I can think about now is aphid babies. So thank you.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll jump to question number 3. This comes from Danielle in Flint, Michigan. How do you grow a Baltic Blue Pothos? Is it different than regular pothos in its care? The biggest. Oh,
I was gonna say this one's all you because I don't know what that plant is. I'm ashamed to say I don't know Baltic Blue Pothos.
no worries. So Baltic Blue is a 2022 introduction into Costa Farms Trending Tropicals collection. And what makes it a little bit different than most of your more common pothos is that it's a clone of a species called pinnatum rather than a clone of the more common species aureum. And it's called pinnatum actually because as the leaves mature, they develop really cool fenestrations. So it almost develops a monstera-like look rather than that traditional heart-shaped golden pothos.
So it's similar to a Cebu Blue.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
It's basically just a different flavor of Cebu Blue. We actually get a lot of questions right now since it's a new plant about what the difference between Baltic Blue and Cebu Blue is, and it's largely the color. Cebu Blue has a really beautiful silvery blue sheen to it, whereas Baltic Blue, as the leaves mature, they're a dark green with a bluish cast. So if you see them next to each other, you're not going to mix them up. Another cool, fun thing is that the cuttings we harvest to be able to grow Cebu Blue, they're younger, and so the leaves are much smaller. Whereas the cuttings from Baltic Blue are older, so the leaves are larger, and in many cases they're just starting to fenestrate at the time the plants ship to your local store, or if you buy them online when they ship to your home.
That's cool. That's really cool. We basically sell a almost fenestrating, like about to graduate into fenestration mode plant. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a really fun plant. But no, it really doesn't require anything different than traditional golden pothos. I know that you grow several other clones of Pinata, Michelle.
I do.
In your experience, have you found anything that you'd call out between Pinatum and Aureum that you're like, oh, it might be nice to.
No, I treat them differently just because my goal is different with the two of those. I grow one up and I grow one trailing. But I mean, I water them the same lay, all of that. So no, I don't think there's any difference.
So there you go, Danielle. You should find that Baltic Blue is just as easy to enjoy as good old school golden pothos is. And one nice thing too is that because it's not variegated, it grows pretty quick. It's not going to be as slow as some of the variegated pothos varieties, which I know frustrate a lot of people who want this big full plant, and they have to wait because there's not enough chlorophyll to fuel. So,
well, we like big plants and we cannot lie.
there's our wisdom for today. Speaking of wisdom, let's jump into our plant misperception.
Okay.
This is one I've been seeing more and more online. Cinnamon is a great insecticide for your plants.
What? I remember when I first started, well, like not when I first started, but when plants started becoming a big thing on social media, I remember I saw a lot of people sprinkling cinnamon on their soil. Is that what you're talking about? Like cinnamon on the soil for fungus gnats?
Exactly.
Or just throwing cinnamon on a plant?
Well, I think the myth there has expanded, from, well, if it kills fungus gnats, it must kill aphids and mealybugs too.
No.
Because how the game of telephone works.
Okay.
Especially online.
So really interesting that the game of telephone on this one, because I was talking to a friend. She is really smart. Her name is Suzanne Bug Lady. If you don't follow her, follow her. She's very good at bugs. You think I'm passionate about bugs? She is on steroids passionate about bugs. She's really smart. So I was talking to her, I think this came up a little while ago, and she kind of told me the story of cinnamon. And this is a really fun telephone game with cinnamon, how it's been kind of evolved and misconstrued and over the years devolved into something very different than what its original intentions were. So first of all, she schooled me on the fact that not all cinnamons are the same. Like, I did not know that. A lot of the cinnamon that we have today is not cinnamon. It's something that tastes like cinnamon or close enough to cinnamon. Um, and so I think, first of all, it's not cinnamon, most likely. Second of all, what happened was, I don't know when this whole thing happened, but orchid growers used to apply cinnamon to orchid roots, true cinnamon, because it does have antifungal properties, I think. I'm not really sure if that was the study results, but that was the whole goal, for things like pythium, which is damping off and things like that. So they would apply cinnamon to the orchid roots for fungus. And I think what happened, and this is what her theory is that somebody heard fungus and they heard fungus gnat and then kind of ran with it. And now I'm like honestly shocked that it's evolved from the fungus gnat thing to just all bugs, and just like sprinkling on your plant.
Well, it totally makes sense because it's the most natural thing in the world to want to feel like you're able to use something safe, to be able to.
But it's not
treat.
safe. But it's not. Like, breathing in cinnamon is not. I mean, remember the cinnamon challenge?
Sadly, yes. Yes.
Didn't somebody die? Like, wasn't that bad? Weren't there like medical problems with that? Like, that is not safe. It's not safe. That's a misconception.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, we assume that things are safe because there's also the old school thing about mixing up fertilizers with ammonia, to make your own fertilizers.
No.
And again, I understand, like, oh, I have ammonia under my kitchen sink, so it must be okay to use in my yard, but it's really, really not a great idea.
Very different. Also, cinnamon is caustic. It's not safe. Like, I'm just going to throw that out there. So I understand where you're going, and I wish that it would work. I don't think what we're using is even technically cinnamon. And so that study, regardless of the results of that study or whatever they found, we don't typically have, unless you go and you search for it, like, that's not cinnamon. And I don't know, I've never tried it, but I have a lot of scruples.
I would agree. I think if you really want to use an insecticide, use something that's been formulated to kill insects. It's going to be safer for you. It's going to be safer for your plants, than a lot of these home remedies.
Yeah, and I mean, keep in mind, even though it's a chemical, which isn't, I'm not saying chemicals are safe for people, but they've done their due diligence with testing on these chemicals to understand what the side effects are and recommend the proper PPE and re-entry time and all that jazz. And so there's a lot more information about what the effects could be, versus something that it may be cinnamon, maybe not cinnamon. I don't know. I mean, we do eat it, so it can't be that bad, but it's not. There's always, you just got me on a tangent, and I wish you hadn't, because this is running a little long now. But chemicals are not always just like danger. In fact, what Justin was saying is that if you read the label, they have all the information because the studies have been done. There's more. I think there's a lot of understanding on what those are. I'm not recommending you go and do something crazy with chemicals, but I'm just trying to break down that fear a little bit. And that's all I got.
All righty. Thank you, Michelle.
I'm sorry for so many tangents. I'm very passionate about cinnamon. I didn't realize I was that passionate about cinnamon. I knew the aphids one. I knew that. But cinnamon, I didn't realize I was so passionate about it.
All righty.
Well, I was going to take the lead on this one because it's plant update time, isn't it?
Oh, yes. I had forgotten about plant update time.
Do you have any plant updates?
If you want to go ahead, please do.
Well, I do have one. I don't have it for show and tell because I can't take it off of where it is. But my Siltupicana is fenestrating. It's got its first
Yay!
little hole.
That is very fun. To those of you who are new plant parents, Michelle is talking about Monstera Siltupicana, which is one of the, I think, underutilized species of Monstera.
I would agree.
Um, and like a lot of them, a lot of growers, grow it young.
Hmm.
So it's faster and easier to propagate. And the younger it is, the longer it takes to fenestrate.
Yes,
And
took
so
a
yeah,
very long time. Very long time. I think I've had that plant for 8 months. And I mean, that's a long time because I have it growing up something. And yeah, it finally has, it was barely noticeable. I mean, it was a small little hole, barely noticeable, but it's there. So
and the next leaf will be even more. So woohoo!
we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got. You don't have anything, Justin, on this one?
Nope, not for this one.
Well, you just went through a bit of a scare anyway with your plants and the electricity going out. So I'm just happy they're all safe and warm.
I know, I am too. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to listen. We hope to see you on another podcast. And as usual, if you have any questions you want us to talk about, send them in. And with that, happy gardening.
Bye bye.